Hey guys, today I want to make a video, basically the differences in the service uniform from today and what Marines would have been wearing in World War II. So this is an older alpha blouse I have, probably been worn in 5 years, so please forgive if there's some little discrepancies. I threw it together as best I could. So probably the biggest difference and the first thing you guys are going to key in on is the leather belt. I know when we talk about that or patches, that's like the first thing guys key in on. So I have another example here in addition to the one on the mannequin in front of me. So these went away in roughly 1942, early 43 due to material shortages. Obviously, issuing every Marine a leather belt took away leather that we were using for boondockers or equipment, things like that. But these were highly common and popular in the early war, and then you would see late war guys private purchasing them to look like the old salty dudes who had them. But it was I guess about 2 inch, inch and 3/4 leather belt. The earlier ones were cordovan leather, this kind of brownish color, and then you see kind of the blacker ones later in the war. It had a 100% brass buckle, which would have been expected to be polished, and it was worn around the waist of the coat in lieu of the cloth belt we have today. And that's probably one thing that really sets this 1940s uniform apart from what Marines are wearing and issued today. Another thing, obviously, is the division patch. Of course, the first one came around with the 1st Marine Division when they got back to Australia in early 1943. And then we lost those in January of 1947. But those were worn at the division level as well as the air wing level, and then some various commands like FMF Pacific Troops, Paramarines had their own, Raiders had their own, things like that. And those would be worn on the left sleeve. And you really didn't see, we didn't have a system like the Army where a combat patch went on your right arm or anything like that. Your current assigned division was a left patch. You didn't have to earn it or anything once you were assigned to the unit that was issued to you. Probably the next biggest thing, in addition to the belt and the patch, is just going to be the material. So, World War II, these uniforms were a wool, a legitimate, really nice quality wool uniform. Whereas now we have this synthetic material. Personally, I think it feels cheap. It doesn't feel substantial like the wool one was. And think about it, this was your daily wear. So how we wear camis today, Marines are wearing their service uniform. The difference was this would be the winter service uniform, whereas this is our year-round service uniform. You had your winter uniform, which is the green trousers and a green shirt or green blouse, which is a thicker wool intended to keep you warm. And in summer, you had the summer service uniform, which was a khaki, so it's lighter in the sun and it's a much lighter material, almost like a seersucker material. So even though you were still in a professional attire, it was a lighter material designed for the season. And I'm just going to rant a little bit, but I think it's something we've gotten away from. Marines, if you weren't in the field, were wearing this. You weren't wearing a combat uniform today, like we have the camouflage uniform, the Marine Corps combat uniform, which we don't wear into combat and haven't in probably 20 years since we got frogs, and before then the weird flight suit transition time. So we're shooting Marines and asking Marines to maintain a uniform which isn't necessarily professional in appearance. We don't wear that in public. You're not allowed to wear that in public. It doesn't have to be polished, doesn't have to be ironed. And I know those things make quality of life for the Marines a little bit easier. But there's, I think, a serious sense of pride lost in getting away from a uniform where you look good, you feel good, right? Like it's like sports teams who wear suits before games. You know, if you showed up to work in this, yeah, you'd have to put in some maintenance and things. But there was a flip side where, yes, this was a daily work uniform, so it was acceptable to be a little more comfortable. Maybe guys, back then, they were wearing shirt stays, but maybe not the super tight ones like we do today. They were wearing regular leather shoes, not the high gloss ones we wear today. So if they scuffed it, they just repolished it. And it was a wool uniform, so if you hung it up, it wasn't gonna get super wrinkled like the real cheap, like polyester uniforms that we're using today. It was a sense of pride. It showed who you were, and it's just something that I think we're in a bad spot with in the Marine Corps, to be totally honest. I think the camouflage uniform, we have to make a decision why we keep buying it and issuing it when we don't use it in combat, but we also don't use it in garrison. So my personal opinion, no one cares what I think apparently, but I think we should probably go to something more professional, but a little bit more comfortable to wear in garrison, and then just totally switch to like a frog style uniform for field and combat use, and just go back to a system that worked that we had instead of this weird middle ground. Another thing I'm gonna go off about is awards inflation. Like, there's no reason I should have this many more awards, and this is even my updated ribbons. Above a Marine who landed on Peleliu, and had this Marine served on Guadalcanal, Gloucester, and Peleliu, the only difference would have been he'd have 2 or 3 more stars on his campaign medal, and his puck. Besides point, getting away from the fact that we should have gotten issued a puck for Sangin, but I'm not going to go there. But so we have awards today. You'll see officers and whoever with these massive ribbons. And we go back to Marines. There's a reason they're wearing 1/2-inch ribbons versus the 3/8 we were today. So the ones today are actually thinner because we're issuing out so many that we have to make room for them. So we made the ribbons smaller. That happened again in 47 before the Korean War, so we could add them all. And you look at Marines from the 40s who landed on multiple islands, unless they have Valor Awards or Purple Hearts, they had their campaign medal, and really that's it. Maybe the American Defense if they served before Pearl Harbor, which I guess now is your national defense. But there's so many awards today, and the Marine Corps is probably the best of all the branches. I mean, you really go to some of the other services, and the awards they're giving out are just wild. So, kind of ranting on that, but you have a Marine here. He was discharged, so this is a ruptured duct. This means he's allowed to wear his uniform, even though he's out of the service while he goes home and gets civilian clothes. So he was wounded on Peleliu, and he has 5 ribbons. So he has his Asiatic campaign, because he served a campaign. He served on an island in the Pacific. World War II victory, his Purple Heart, and Presidential Unit Citation. So it's just one of those things that I think probably need to check and go back. But again, who's listening to me? But anyways, back into the wearability of the uniform. Again, the shirt is like a nice wool material. It's a lot easier on the skin. I'm wearing a clip-on tie here, totally honest. They didn't have those back then, or the Marines weren't wearing them. So it's a double Windsor knot. The Eagle Globe and anchors are metal versus like the plastic ones that are issued today. Let me straighten that out. And as well, you'll see later uniforms have the shooting badges, but earlier, again, they were, I guess, I don't know what metal it was, but they would have to be polished. They weren't this pre-polished high gloss or whatever you want to call it, like anodized like we issued today. Same with your metals. So if you have metals, you're kind of maintaining and polishing those yourself. So overall, we've moved to a uniform that I think is much less comfortable. It's something that I think Marines probably in the 40s felt more pride in, wearing their division patches, wearing awards they felt they legitimately earned. And this was your daily work uniform. You wore your resume on your shirt, and your uniforms and your ribbons meant something. Whereas this is maybe worn when you check into a new unit, and if you do a mess night. Other than that, you're wearing your blues once a year. But anyways, and the last thing I'll mention here is the rank. So we moved away when the Department of Defense, when the War Department shifted to the Department of Defense in 1947, we all fell under the same E1 through E9, O1 through the top structure. So the Marine Corps had to basically combine a lot of ranks. So it used to be if you were an infantryman or an artilleryman, you were a gunnery sergeant. And if you were in a technical field, you were a technical sergeant. If you were a platoon sergeant, your rank was platoon sergeant. And that was the difference in a straight chevron or a rocker underneath your 3 sergeant chevrons. It's another piece of identity that we've lost. And in MOS specific one, we had MOS specific ranks that we've lost. And we've all felt, and so you won't see Marines in World War II with these cross rifles. That's something that came post-war, post-Korea, when we were forced to bring all our ranks into the same structure. So you see Marines in World War II, Korea, there was nothing in the middle. There's no cross rifles. The only thing you'll see, there are some different insignia that mean different things. So you'll still have a diamond for a first sergeant. I've seen old rank where the platoon sergeant had one rocker and a star in the middle, which denoted that he was a platoon sergeant. There's a whole chart. I'll try and list, or I'll try and put in my video of all the different ranks, but we've kind of moved away from that. So we've lost, I think, we've lost a lot of things that made our service unique and that Marines could really take pride in. And we've moved to a uniform that Marines pull out of the dryer and throw on boots, and we call it a combat uniform, but we don't see combat in it. So it's not to say that everything is bad or, we don't make progress on a lot of things, but that's just my take on it. I'm going to make another couple videos. I'll do the same thing with blues, enlisted and officer, as well as a total progression, probably from World War I, when we get the winter service uniform, the green one, with a high collar till today, because there's some changes in Korea and Vietnam that are substantial that we should mention. But I just wanted to make a quick, which turned into a long video, of World War II versus today and what those two would look like.